my name is James Britt. I'm the curator here at Tilt Institute for the Contemporary Image. We are primarily a photography place, but we do engage with other disciplines in conversation with photography, as you can tell, with video and with the painting as well. This is a conversation that we're going to have with the artists of how we stay free. The way I want to kick this off is for you all to talk about your origin stories. So we know how you got involved in activism, why you shoot photography, why you do video. Chris created an anthology called How We Stay Free, a book that actually inspired this exhibition.
You doing my work for me, I ain't gotta say nothing.
So maybe we'll start there. So maybe we'll start with the book because that kind of leads into everything else. So let's start with the book. And the book is here too. It's on sale if you want to purchase it. Also, there's a sequel which I'm sure that Chris is going to talk about too.
Hey everybody, how y'all doing? I run an abolition school, and it's very rare times that we start something without like a chant or anything like that. But I'm very happy to be here tonight. And yes, so I'm Chris Rogers, he, him pronouns. I'm from Chester, Pennsylvania. I'm hoping somebody here is familiar with the place. And I've been in Philly since 2012, 2013. I used to run the Paul Robeson House and Museum over in West Philly, 4951 Walnut Street. Was the program director there for a while. Now I'm working on the Henry Ossawa Tanner House up in North Philly, 29th and Diamond, another sort of like National Historic Landmark house. My work sort of flows between Black heritage and community cultural organizing. I always say I've been trying this out. I don't see if people accept it. I'm a cultural worker, which means I do cultural work, but all of it has political implications. But I don't necessarily say I'm always like a political activist in a sense, I was very excited for this project to come together. I've been, as someone who's part of the community of activism here in the city, very aware of all the folks who are here and their legacies. And just the fact that they are, activism, organized, it's about showing up, right? And these are the people who consistently show up, are not just there, taking the images, but are helping us form narratives that are advancing the work. So I've just been really excited to be here. How We Stay Free is the anthology that was made when the Paul Robeson House and Museum was closed for health and safety, and we said we're going to do a zine that's about organizing in Philadelphia. And then Common Notions was like, well, we'll publish this. And then that took it up a level. Then I started making phone calls to some of the organizers that we already had relationships with and said, let's do something. And then next thing you know, we got like 20-something submissions, and it's like, oh God. But then we had to take the demands of the organizations and also put that in the anthology. And I was really fighting, and me and Faja was fighting of we are not trying to be the exhaustive history of 2020 in Philadelphia. We were like, but y'all did it. I'm like, no. These are certainly not all the stories. But trying to sort of galvanize a sort of radical ecosystem here in Philadelphia, focused on Black Philadelphia. Though Joe's in it. Joe was the only person I was like, we gotta use Joe's stuff, no matter what, and just the access that Joe has is, paramount. And and I just put out a new book called My City Needs Something, which is somewhat of a sequel to How We Stay Free, which is essentially if How We Stay Free is looking at the demands, looking at organizing, looking at activism and the type of platforms we create. My City Needs Something is kind of more inward facing and talking about the sort of habits, practices, internal work, interior work, wrestling with our own sort of contradictions that gets us ready and sustains us in the fight of the work. So it's thinking, this work has to be inside out. Tony Cable says the revolution doesn't begin out there, but in here. So you see the relationship between the two. I think that's enough of me talking. But I just really appreciate and really excited for tonight's conversation and dig in more to your practice.
I'm Harvey Finkle. I've been shooting for about 5 decades. I actually began as a social worker. I did 13 years working as a social worker with an MSW. And so I think there was always some predisposition to deal with social issues, social justice. And one major, in the beginning, while I was a social worker, I was involved with a group called People for Human Rights, which is at national level was called People Against Racism. And the idea was if the group of white people only, because the problem with racism is white people. And one of the things that came of that, myself and 4 or 5 other people got involved in establishing the People's Swap, which most of you probably know of now as Bread and Roses. We started that in 1970, and what it is, we tried to get the Health and Welfare Council, it's called that in a united way, to fund something other than counseling programs, get involved in some community-based programs. They had no interest in it at all, so we decided to start the People's Well. And we started with, in the beginning we picked 10 groups, which included the Black Panthers Breakfast Clubs with Young Lords, Women's Liberation, Philadelphia Welfare Rights at that time, which was a very active, progressive organization. So, and we decided, we started to organize, and the first year we raised $12,000, and it wasn't a lot, but we were happy we raised anything. And what happened at that time, I had just become interested in photography, and most of the photography I was interested in strange, and it was not necessarily dealt with the social change or protests or anything else. It dealt with some, I was saying earlier today, that my favorite photographer was somebody named Harvey Finkle. The place you would see would be in museums, not in social privacies, but I loved it. And then when I became part of the People Spot, this was 1970, and maybe I was the only one who had a camera. Now, when they get a camera, everybody, periscopes up, have the whole message. And so I was the one who began photographing the different groups that we had set up to fund for the People's Fund. And from there, I began to get more and more into documenting stuff on the street, getting more involved with issues related to social change, stuff.
Hey everyone, thanks for coming out tonight. I'm Joe Piette, and like Harvey, I did not start out as a photographer. I was born in Canada, got drafted, moved to the U.S., got drafted into U.S. military, got sent to Vietnam. That's what I learned in Vietnam is really right for my life. And that made me an activist. So when I came back to the U.S., I immediately joined the anti-war movement. I've been in many movements since then. Like Chris said, I always say that solidarity means showing up. It's not enough to sign a petition or check like on social media. You have to show up. You have to do more. Photography to me is, I would, in Vietnam I bought a camera, a Nikon camera. And that's the only good thing that came out of the military for me. But when I got back, I would take photos of the protest. And then I learned that people need the photos. They help advertise the 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 activists on the streets. You know, it creates more interest and maybe brings more people to the next protest. At least that's the goal when I take photos. And over the years, I've gotten better at taking photos. I photos from 40 or 50 years ago, like pretty bad photos. So I've gotten better. The equipment had gotten better. I've gone from black and white to, you know, the photos in my camera now are mostly used. You know, they're digital. I can put them up online in hours or even minutes if I want. To me, black and white was slower, takes longer, it costs more. They are better photos. As everyone said, black and white are better. But it's the speed of it. The world moves at a high speed right now. It needs that. To me, I want them up as soon as possible. And it's all part of creating a larger movement. And as you see in these photos, it's not one movement against the war, one movement for Palestine, another movement for trans rights or union rights. I always see it as one movement, all of these are part of the people's movement against the system that we live under. Is that enough?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming. My name's Sunny Singh, he, him. Born and raised in New Jersey. I've been living in Philly for probably a little over 10 years now. I grew up listening to a lot of like punk rock, and that's how I became politicized and learned about Labumbi Abu Jamal, the move bombing, everything that's happening at the hands of U.S. imperialism and capitalism. But part of that trajectory was becoming obsessed with just documenting live music. So I really, in high school, early 2000s, was just bringing a camera, reporting every concert I can go to, and I think I probably filmed like over 8,000 at this point. But as I sort of like got older, I realized that the camera is also a weapon in terms of just documenting social movements, amplifying what people are saying in the street and whatnot. I regretfully, you know, I have a background in tech, so regretfully after college and grad school, I got sucked into the defense sector and worked for a couple of years in that space. And for me, it was very much like, fuck, I have to pay the bills, but I don't agree with any of the stuff that I'm doing, but at least it's allowing me to go out in the street on weekends and whatnot and like use this camera to help amplify these voices in the street and in the community. But I think like 2017 or 2018, I tell this story quite a bit. I got a job offer from Palantir, and I was like, what is this company? And I looked into it and I was like, oh, this is actually evil. And I told them very nicely, not very nicely, that, you know, to fuck off. But at that point, I decided to just really abandon the tech space altogether. And since then, I've just been like a freelance documentarian, taking sort of the skills I've acquired, like documenting live music and like culture, and applying that to documenting what's happening in the street. And sort of, you know, I still run this channel where people come and consume music, but they consume the live music entertainment that I produce. But I sort of subvert that relationship by injecting these moments I'm capturing in the street. So sort of, you know, people are coming in expecting entertainment and to sort of disconnect from the material world, but I'm showing them the reality of what's happening in the street as a way of just, you know, whether it's signal boosting or culture jamming, whatever it is. My whole sort of approach in this day and age is to really harness, you know, people's attention and try to amplify these things that I care about. So the piece, I'm sure we'll talk about the piece, but the piece that I created is very much an inversion of the types of technology that I would be creating at these tech companies, and inverting it and harnessing it as a way to empower the struggles that we're facing in our community and the communities at large, in a way that I think can empower us moving forward to really identify the the common enemy using a common language and sort of identify how it exists and how we can attack it. So.
Hey y'all, Mike Arrison, pronouns they, he. I'm Philly born and raised. And thanks to a handful of really fantastic teachers I had early on, I was lucky enough to know from a very young age that I always wanted to be an artist. And part of that was also I have Tourette's, and when I was much younger, they were much, much worse. And it was through doodling and sketching and all of that I used art to self-soothe and explored all different kinds of art. And then it was on in my teen years, right after I got my first camera, dinky little point and shoot, nothing compared to the phones we all have now. My family went to Puerto Rico to go and visit family, and it was on that trip that I didn't even decide that I was going to be a photographer. That was the trip that I really just came home and just had a innate understanding that I am a photographer. This is what I'm going to do. Went to college, studied photography at Drexel, and was very much going down the path of didn't know specifically what form of photography I wanted to really dive into. I just knew that I love documenting the world around me. And it was at that time at Drexel that I technically covered my first protest on assignment for the school newspaper. Went and covered the Occupy during the Occupy Wall Street movement in 2011. Didn't really think much of it. It was just another assignment for the newspaper. I started college in 2008. My first couple of months at college was a run up to Obama getting elected for the very first time. And so my early political awakening was very much in that yes, we can. We're living in a post-racial America, all these liberal lies that we were being told in 2008 onwards. And then it was in 2015 when Freddie Gray was brutally murdered in Baltimore at the hands of the BPD down there. That was a time period of my second political awakening of having the veil ripped away. And I knew I wanted to go and attend the protest, and I was like, okay, well, I'm going to attend. I'm going to bring my camera and document. Again, not really thinking much in terms of the political power that documenting these movements can have. And it was in the years after that, I would just kind of protests were just another facet of something that I would photograph. Beginning to slowly awaken politically, then 2020 was a whole nother awakening on and on. But something that I've been thinking of a lot is because last year was 10 years now of doing this for me, and I've been constant, now this is the majority of what I shoot. And as I reflect back on the last 10 years, there's and how, similar to how I didn't consciously choose to become a photographer, I didn't consciously choose to become a political photographer. And there's a poem by a Palestinian poet that I came across a couple years ago that really just fully sums up my trajectory. The poet's name, I'm sorry if I'm butchering the pronunciation, is Marwan Marfoul. And it's a short little just 4 lines. And it's, in order for me to write poetry, I must listen to the birds. In order for me to hear the birds, the warplanes must be silent. And that piece really speaks to me of, as I decided to become a photographer, I knew I love documenting, I love photographing concerts, I love taking portraits, I love photographing anything and everything. And yet, as the warplanes kept getting louder and I stopped being able to hear the birds, so to speak, that really spoke to just how important this work is that we do. and how this wasn't I didn't choose this path, but could I go back to me 11 years ago? I wouldn't change a thing. It's very much and I think that's and I think a lot of us can speak to this this is a calling. And I think a lot of we have a number of other photographers here. This is not work that we do because it's flashy, because we want to get in newspapers, because we want to get published but these are movements that we believe in and belong to, and we see out of real life. These are movements that we are already belonging to, we are already fighting for, and our place in fighting for these movements is using what everyone has your own talent that they bring to these movements, and for us, it's documenting them.
Can you all talk about the trust that you were able to cultivate with the individuals in these photos? Because, they're just as critical to this, as you all are. I mean, in some ways, I feel like they should be, on this stage too, or, they should be, on in the exhibition text. So, especially for individuals like Joe and Harvey, who've been doing this for an extremely long period of time, obviously you've, cultivated this relationship with particular groups of individuals, and then the same with Sunny and Mike. So how does that happen? How does that process, occur for you all? What do you do in order to engender that trust from the public?
I think that's a Joe question more than anything.
I think it's a two-way street.
Can everybody hear? Do you need to do the mic thingy?
Is there also? All right, I think it's a two-way street. Well, that works.
Thanks, Joe.
It goes both ways. I find out about an event, either people call me, they send me an email, I happen to see a flyer somewhere, and I think it's over time, they see you at more and more events, and they understand that you're not in it for to make money. You're not in it to feed the mainstream press. We're in it to increase the visibility of the movement. And I have to say, there's a number of people here in the audience, and we're all part of the movement. What's it called?
True great photographer in Philadelphia.
Yeah. That's the role that we're trying to build. Now we have existed now for over a year. We're trying to offer photography to community groups to help the community groups succeed in whatever struggle they're involved. And I think that will build more trust, that this will be a group of photographers that the community can count on. So it's not just an individual, it's more of a group that will be able to provide more coverage for a wider movement. I'm sure you must have more to say on this.
The question of trust is really important. I think, like Warren Joe says, people see you out at different organizations, see you out at different people, see you out there photographing with consistency, and so that really helps build the trust. I've been involved, I guess, with about 3 or 4 groups for at least 30 years photographing. I'm thinking of the one that began in with the Kensington Welfare Rights Movement in 1993. they had there was a friend of mine who was their photographer, and they had an exhibit that was working a takeover house. A takeover house is an empty house that nobody's living in, owned by a federal government usually, and no move made to house homeless people in. So my friend couldn't continue photographing because he was leaving the country. And this is 93, and up until a few years ago, I photographed him. Like it's just probably to 2020. And the thing about it is you become like endemic. You're a part of the group, and you know the group, they know you. It's no separation between the photographer and the group you're photographing. And the other thing about so I had the same experiences with the disabled in action. I had the same experience with Project Home, and I have the same experience with Deaf Culture Kingdom. And what I find is everything that I shoot mostly black and white until a few years ago, and everything I print, I give them a copy of. In other words, that's my payment to them for allowing me to do this. In other words, I feel privileged that they allow me to do this and allow me to do it. So that's that.
And I think to what Joe said about showing up, I think a second part to that is showing up and sticking around. I think where a lot of the, in my own experience, I've noticed where a lot of the trust has been built, especially in the last handful of years of, like when I first started photographing protest, I saw my camera as a shield of the protection of the press. The cops will not target the press. And as we know all too well, it's gone the exact opposite way of now having the camera makes you a target. But I think where a lot of the trust gets built is us, we're putting our bodies on the line along with it's because we're a part of these movements, we're sticking around, we're ending up in the same cave as everyone else. We are facing the same cops, hitting us with their bikes or pushing you down or so much worse. And I think that's where a lot of the trust gets built, is the people who are leading these protests, taking part in these protests, see us there with our cameras, showing up and putting ourselves in the exact same danger that they are putting themselves in, because these are movements that we believe in, and everyone taking part in these is willing to take the risk of standing up. And when they see you continuing to show up, then it very much is a trust built of being in the trenches together.
Yeah, to echo that, I think obviously our continued presence showing up at these events has sort of engarnered, created trust, but also I know for at least Joe and I, we are also organizing with certain groups as well. So we are in the signal chats, we're showing up to meetings outside of documenting to help organize these events. And I think that doing that over the years has allowed, I think we all agree that you're first and foremost activists. We're not just like outsiders coming in to document. And I think us showing up to being a part of these organizing committees has shown that we are all about the cause. I think in the last couple of years too, especially, photos and videos of protests have been used to dox people. And I know in my case, unfortunately, some of my videos have been used to dox students, has been used to dox some people that are in this room. And I know Joe his work has been used that way as well. And so it's often like a tough needle to thread, but I think that, when an organizer asks us, hey, can you take that down or create that there might be repercussions, we take it seriously. We take it down immediately. And it's sort of forced me to adapt how I document too. I generally now don't focus much on the crowd. I mostly focus on the person speaking. at a protest, even though, you know, even then there's risks involved, and I'm open to, you know, following their lead if they want it censored or whatnot. Or even at certain protest rallies, or direct actions may get a little spicy, and I think we all know not to point our cameras at certain things that are happening, and I think by doing that, we've also sort of gotten the trust from organizers and protesters. That seeing other archivists and documentarians who are not really part of the movement come in and shoot things that are happening at a protest that should not be documented, and it causes a lot more problems. So I think our willingness to be responsive to our communities, because we know that, you know, the work that we do is powerful in a number of ways, but it could also be used against us. And I think that the way we handle it with care, sometimes we get it wrong, but we are very much trying to center what our communities want in the moment.
Thank you. I want to do a couple annotations, if you will. First, Sunny, when you mentioned culture jam, I wake up in the morning, I grab my phone, I start scrolling. The first thing I hear every day, fuck Israel, all day, every day, is every morning, right? Like, this in terms of like the consistency and the, like, I feel like even as I think about the video, I feel like I'm like watching it, you know, and that way of recognizing and the forcefulness in which you do the work, you know? And I also gotta add that, like, Joe is also like a package deal. It's Joe and Betsy, you know? They come in together, you know? Joe might have a camera in his hand, Betsy's gonna have some things to pass out, you know? So while Betsy isn't up here on this panel, we also gotta honor, you know, the work that Betsy does in the organizing. She's also leads here in the city. Yes. And the question I wanted to offer, I think, you know, you mentioned a good photo. Like, it took you a while to learn how to make a good photo. Sunny, I think about your work in like before, I feel like we was all just pulling up our phones and live streaming. Then you came into the game and it was just like, oh, okay, let's see if we can get Sunny to do it. And I'm thinking about like aesthetics, but like just as we talked about, it's aesthetics, but it's like aesthetics on the run. Like you're in the street, like you have to move at the pace of the action. And thinking about like, yeah, just like those aesthetic concerns of like, like how do you figure out what moment or what sort of detail or what sort of aspect and the quality of that you're bringing into it as you go about the work of like documenting? Because there is like just, yeah, the documentation, the sort of like journalism of it, but there's also, you know, a lot of heart in all of these images and the videos and the feeling, and like there's a lot of feeling that goes into it too. And just like, I just would love to hear from you all on like that side of the work, the inspirations and influences there, and like how do you go about that, knowing that you got to keep like the pace of shots going while the action is happening?
You said my trigger word, emotion. Emotion is everything that I try and capture in my work. I'm very much not approaching it from the journalistic of here's what happened, here's who was there, here's all the who, what, where, when, and why, and all that. And there's very much a place for that. But in my own personal work, I'm looking for not so much here's what happened, but here's what it felt like to be there. Here's the emotion of the action of, and I'm looking very much for like the full range of emotion, because if there's anything that I've learned, it's that every single emotion can and will show up at these actions of, I think what the catalyzing emotions that get so many people to get off their couch and into the streets is anger, fear, confusion. That's a motivating force. And then when they get out there, you're going to find the same emotions even heightened of the fervor of someone giving a amazing speech, or the fear as of if it's a action that's particularly relevant to the person, if it's a movement that's about or speaking to their specific identity or a demographic or what have you. But the emotions that I've really been looking for the last couple of years is tenderness, joy, and love. Because that is something that I am constantly seeing. And especially when I do not go to any protest, if you even want to call it that, from the right, but when you see them, when you see counter protesters, or if like I'm down in DC covering the protest at the inauguration, everyone is there. And you even see it like when you look at the footage from January 6th. Everyone was out for themselves. No one was taking care of everyone else. That's how a couple of the people that died on January 6th, I'm pretty sure there's like 1 or 2 people that died of heart attacks on that day, of just no one was caring for one another. And that is something that I consistently see all the time. From something extreme of someone got maced and suddenly you have 4 people helping them out, getting the mace out of their eyes, helping them walk out to somewhere safe, all the way down to something as simple as someone just helping someone fix their kufia. If they have a kufia covering their face, they will have someone helping them fix it. And so that's something that I'm always looking for when I'm getting back home, going through my work. I'm looking for what was the emotions of this day and what are my photographs that best convey that.
I have opinions. And I think no one, everyone has opinions. Everyone has a set beliefs. They have ideas of what should be changed, what needs to be changed, what is wrong, what is right. And it shows in our photographers. It shows in whatever you do in life, whether it's writing or whatever. So when I go to a protest, I'm looking for stuff. I guess there's 2 or 3 focuses for me. One, of course, is like what Mike said, with emotion. I look for people who are strong expressions on their faces, who are militant, they're not just walking around without feeling. If they show feelings, they're gonna draw my lens. The other thing is, I want to show group. Now, that one of the beliefs in this society was individualism, right? So most of my photos, I hope my photos here express this. Sometimes I'll take a photo of an individual, but the majority of my photos are a group. I want to show an individual maybe with 10 or 20 people around them. Maybe that individual has some emotion, but I tend to steer away from getting a close-up of that person. I want to show that person within the group, because this is the protest. This is a lot of people, hopefully, getting together to push an idea, to push an issue. Not so that it's not an individual act, it's a group act. I want to push togetherness, that together we can change things. And I try to show that in photography. And the third thing, I like to have signs and banners and tapirs and puppets and I'm not subtle in my photography. I'm trying to show together the people plus the signs. But I think the signs are important. And as I said, I have opinions. If those signs suck, if that sign is something I don't agree with, even if that person is showing good expression, showing good spirit, if that person is saying, vote for Hillary Clinton, I'm not taking that picture. I don't care what that person looks like. I'm not taking it. So the signs to me that's the message of that protest is primate to take photos of things that don't agree with the purpose of that protest. To me, that's not why I'm there. I'm there to push those issues. And that's so, and then the technical aspects. So, it's the light. Where's the light coming from? Motion, all those technical things are also important. I screw up a lot but I think all of us have done that.
If I heard some of what Chris was saying, how do you decide what you're shooting, and how do you go about shooting? I once was being interviewed by Homer Jackson.
Homer Jackson, yes, Jazz Project.
It was a jazz project.
Rest in power.
Right. And he asked me a question, and he knew I liked jazz. So the question he asked, does jazz influence your shooting? And I didn't really get it when I first heard it, but after a while, I don't usually, I just like impromptu, like photography is improvised. I mean, a lot of things know it's going to happen, so you set it up and you're going to shoot. I don't mean studio photography, but on the street. But a lot of times I see something, and I don't have any outcome for it, but I start shooting it, and it's like a dance, okay? And I'm moving all the time with the camera, and suddenly, like, got it. You know, after shooting, I could shoot 10 shots, I can shoot 30 shots of the same thing, and not feel satisfied that I got what I wanted. And it doesn't mean later on when I look in the darkroom that I got what I wanted, but it's like a dance. It's like it's music. It's jazz. Yeah. A lot of it, not all of it, a lot of it. So it's that improvised, impromptu moment, and you're trying to make it more precise what it is you wanted to say.
Yeah, I like what Party said about it being a dance. I think for me, I tend to run on autopilot. Maybe it's the mosh pit. It's the mosh pit. Yeah, it's just sort of like capturing the raw emotion in the moment. I think when I'm filming things, I'm sometimes thinking about the edit while I'm filming. For example, I did like 2 or 3 years ago on 4th of July. I knew that I was going to produce something using like Bruce Springsteen's Born in the USA as the backing track for the video, right? And so when people started setting American flags on fire in front of City Hall, I was like, okay, I need the shot to last 10 seconds to fill that first like 4 bars. So I need to shoot this in slow motion so I can get the longer cut of this. So a lot of my motivation when I'm filming is thinking like, okay, I kind of know what kind of beat I'm going to be using as the backing track for this video. How do I frame the shot that's going to complement like that instrumental track. But to what Mike said, I think I'm also, when I'm shooting these things, I'm thinking about, I want to capture the raw motion. So I think like 3 examples that are in my installation are, for example, Northern Erica is speaking at the Nakba Day commemoration, I think 2 years ago at front of City Hall. And it was a really amazing speech, and she's connecting the dots about what's happening both here and abroad. And there are moments where sanitation workers are driving by and stopping and honking their horns, where taxi cab drivers are stopping and waving a Palestinian flag. And I have Noor framed in the shot where just by panning the camera a little bit, I get the sanitation worker in the shot or the taxi cab driver in the shot. And it wasn't something I expected, but I was in the moment just ready to, when I saw that was the response that bystanders and passersby were having, all I had to do was rack the focus a little bit and get them in the shot, and then rack the focus back to get Nora. So there's moments like that where I'm thinking about who am I pointing the camera at, but what is beyond them as well, so that if I need to get that, I can easily just subtly get that shot by just tuning in the focus. So there's these moments where I'm thinking about what is resonating with people as the speech is happening, but I'm also thinking about what is going to resonate after the fact once this video is consumed digitally online. So 2 examples are on October 8th, great organizer here, Mike gave an amazing impassioned speech on October 8th about how he felt about what happened on October 7th, and yeah, Mike. I know Mike got a lot of heat for that, and he stood by it. And not only that, I think he got messages, and people were getting messages from people in Palestine in Gaza saying, "Thank you for speaking out. We feel like no one is seeing us." And I think that there were moments where, not just my videos, the photos across, us here, but in general, the documentation of protests in the heart of empire has reached the people that need to see that they are not forgotten, they are not suffering alone. Another example, there's an amazing organizer, Sam Rise, last year on, year before, we were protesting outside of Ghost Robotics on the anniversary on October 7th, and I think that was last year. And Sam just chews into this cop for 10 minutes. That might be a 15-minute speech. It's in there, and I'm getting shots of Sam because Sam is just on fire, and it's captivating and mesmerizing. But I have the cop in the shot, and I'm really focusing on this cop's face because Sam is just degrading this person, and you can see this person just completely just lose all composure to the point where another cop has to pull them out and step in their place. So while that was happening, I was thinking like, okay, I'm going to focus on the same speech, but I know people need to see that this veneer of this like cop dressed as a RoboCop in military body armor is being broken down by words from someone that we all love and support, and they're just using their voice to do it. So that was another minute for me where I was thinking, yes, I need to capture Sam, but I know that when people see this, and people who are there, we all saw what happened, this cop's reaction. They were not able to take the heat, but I was just thinking about when this video lives on after this moment, I want people to see that. I want people to, no video of a photo is ever going to replace the experience of being there and being present. But for me, it's like, how can we approximate that feeling? How can we approximate or convey to people that are consuming this on a screen later on that this is an estimation of what it was like to be there, and how the speech or what was happening in the street was being received by the people that were in the periphery or being the target of these words.
Let's open it up to questions. Does anybody have any questions they want to ask?
We know y'all got stories too.
Yeah.
Y'all know these people.
Okay. Go ahead.
I'm really interested in the topic of emotion, and I'm writing a dissertation about emotion and the politics of emotion, and the way that emotion shapes our experiences of certain realities. So you spoke about, Mike, you mentioned grief and anger and confusion, and then you touched upon joy. And joy is like the nut that's been hard for me to crack in this work. So I'm curious if you can all say a little more about the way that joy has shaped the spaces the ways that you encountered joy, and the ways that joy has shaped these spaces, the way that you captured it, the way that it moves through people. Yeah.
As I think fear, anger, confusion, all of that is, like I said, what gets us all out there. but I really truly believe that joy is what ultimately keeps us out there and keep bringing us back. There's a line that I love from, I'm a Star Wars nerd. I'm always going to preach the gospel of Andor. If you have not watched Andor, watch the Andor. It's beautiful. But there's a wonderful line there where it's two characters talking and they just experience a loss in the movement. And the younger character is saying, how do we go home? And the older character said, this is what we do. We lose and we lose and we lose until we win. And I think that's a really important lesson to carry and I think what so much of this gallery is speaking to we have photographs and video of movements across 50 years of so many different movements. And I think the really beautiful thing about bringing all of this together and the fact that we didn't organize it by movement or it's all wrapped up as one movement is you're able to look and see all these movements from the past, from the present, and movements that will continue in the future. And I think the real beauty is looking at movements from the past and those that we won, and being able to see the effects of where we are now. Of like looking at the disability fight that Harvey was fighting for so long, and looking at where disability rights were in the 70s compared to where they are now. There's still a long way to go, but I think, Harvey, you would agree there has been a lot of wins in the decades since. And I think for everyone here, the most recent one we can attest to is the No Arena Chinatown. I will always think of the day when we found out that it was struck down and that we won. And it was coming at a time where there were so many losses. It was coming as the genocide in Gaza was just continuing to ramp up, and not only ramp up, but global attention and global support was pulling back. And we were in such a period of feeling that loss. And that win was something that I think really carried so many people forward to show that when we show up, when we fight, we not only can win, but we will win. Not necessarily right away, and not necessarily without loss, but if we keep fighting, we will eventually win, because what other option do we have other than to just, it's either we win or we give up and submit to the boot on our neck. And I don't think anyone in this room is going to submit to the boot on our neck.
In 2023, September, before October 7th, there was a Palestine Rights Festival. How many people here were there?
Palestine rights.
Yeah, it was at UPenn. UPenn did not like it. But a couple days before, we showed the movie Farha. And then the day before, there was a show, I can't pronounce. It's a group of Palestinian women who perform stories within their communities. They're very funny. It was, I mean, there's a lot of reasons for Palestinians to, after what they experienced for 78 years now, this genocide, high points, low points. And yet, this performance by these women was an incredible experience for me to see the joy that, I mean, the whole room was just laughing and continuously laughing. And I have a photo, it's not here, it's going to be, there's a plug, it's going to be at another show that we're doing on Palestine, photos on Palestine. It's going to be at
Studio 34.
Studio 34, starts June
You're all
3rd.
flyers will be here, so it's not.
Yeah, I have flyers there. But that photo, I think, shows not just the performers, but the audience. And everyone's laughing. And it was, to me, as a photographer, I'm watching all this, it was a really, to me, an education that, yes, the struggle involves a lot of effort, a lot of tears, a lot of fight. No, all that is important. But joy is part of that struggle too. That you have to not only celebrate victories, but there's also joy in just the daily life of dealing with the oppression that beats down on you every day. And you have to find ways to deal with that. And I think humor is one of the ways to deal with that. I mean, we all deal with the daily drudgery of dealing with high cost of food and button tops on the street corner and all that shit. So I think these women from Palestine really understood how to deal with it in a way that helps their community, not as individuals, but as a group, deal with these problems.
I would just, Michael referred to the disability rights movement. I'd like to, just one little piece of it. I began photographing them, I guess, in the 80s, and the big issue then was curb cuts. Right? Curb cuts, right? Nobody wanted to have curb cuts. And eventually we had a disability rights lawyer, Steve Cole, who sued the city, and this disability rights movement won. And the mayor, this Mayor Wendell at the time, declared Steve as a public outlaw because he was going to cost them millions of dollars to make curb cuts, until he found out that he could deal with the building trades union and they were making money making the curb cuts. So he stopped complaining about it. But in other words, that was a major victory, and since then there have been other major victories in the disability rights movement. There's one other thing, experience I had. I began photographing the Pennsylvania abolitions to abolish the death penalty in the early 90s. And a friend of mine said to me, "What are you bothering for? It's never going to change." And by then, at that time, I think Texas was putting like over 200 people. Other states, Pennsylvania had 300 people in death row. And today, very few people. It's not perfect, and that there's other issues related to it, but they're not. And there are the issues, for instance, people who have certain problems mentally, people under a certain age, those things that have abolished that. So, and it was a movement across the state and across the country. And it's a little bit like no arenas in Chinatown. If you're not out in the street, I had a friend say, "Why are we demonstrating anymore? Nothing ever happens." He ain't paying attention. because we don't have a lot of tools. And I think that's really very important to have it, get people out and speak. Sure.
Yeah, I just want to, I think everything I wanted to say has been said. But I do want to add that we live in a dying empire that is escalating its violence both here to marginalized communities and abroad, whether it's in Palestine, Sudan, Congo, Iran, Venezuela, Cuba. And I think that's by design. I think they're escalating this because they know that this empire is dying, but they know that by subjecting us to this constant level of just dehumanization and violence, that we will be numb to it. We will be feeling like we cannot act and feel we are just defenseless and hopeless. So I think that when there are moments of joy, and not joy in the sense of like escapism, but celebrating wins, whether it's Save Chinatown or the Move 9 coming home or Aunt Smith coming home, we all celebrate that win. It reminds us that, you know, they do not have complete control over us, our joy. That, like, our joy is the one thing that they cannot get. And you see it online. You see, you know, the children in Palestine are still finding ways of playing in playgrounds that they make out of makeshift a destroyed car or whatever, right? And they're having fun, they're chasing each other. And you'll see Zionists on Twitter just seething, like, because they're seeing that these Palestinians are still alive and they're having fun, right? And so I think that joy and capturing that joy is just it's a reassertion that they, as in the people that are trying to destroy us, have not won completely. Like, they can never, as long as they cannot take our joy, they will never win.
Thank you. Just to add on, so immediately the first thing that came to mind is Laura Shihai's new book by Psychoanalysis in the Streets. It's out from Pluto, and I can't wait to get my hands on it, right? And one of the things that I just been following on her work and talks about sort of like psyops, right? And when we talk about emotions, we also have to be very vigilant about the ways in which these emotional payoffs are set up. And I'm somewhat of a joyful hater, if you will. I mean, I don't want to see if anybody's with me. Let me see if this is a hot take. It took me maybe an hour from when Chris Rabb won the election to like, what the fuck do you think we won? What do you think has changed? What has materially changed in our world right now? And I feel like I'm constantly in that liminal space between those things. So I guess where I'm going with that in terms of like your research work is also about like, we also have to be we have to monitor the emotional payoffs in the way that these empty, symbolic, or anticipatory things get framed as concrete material wins. And so it's like, what we hold joy in is in our community, right? Is in the space that we come together and we exercise our power together. But we also have to watch in ways that people set up stakes, right? Of like, you know, many folks for decades have been about the fully ending the occupation of Palestine, dismantling the state of Israel. And then for a while, it became like the win is just a ceasefire. And that's what how we gotta watch the ways in which we get, so like, what do we hold our joy in is such like, I know that joy exists. And I felt the moments where where you can feel held by your comrades. But we also have to be mindful of, like, for example, Crystal Strong up here top left, next to this Simone Leigh sculpture, which was purchased by a white man for like $700,000, installed on Penn's campus, this sort of black woman representation. At the same time, the University of Pennsylvania has trafficked and moves sort of and they're painting this as like, nah, we've changed our colors, we've changed our ways. So like, emotions are real, they're also sort of like fleeting, they're easily manipulated. And I think like the struggle is like, how do we, Gwendolyn Brooks' speech to the young, live not for the conclusion of the battle, live not for the end of the song, live in the along, right? How do we recognize that what we're assembling here and the sort of relationships that we're building with each other allows us to be able to confront some of the most pressing contradictions within our society today, but also links us to an incredible history of people that have come before us that even inspired us to be able to know what we're doing, and links us to a future of people that we're passing this work on to. Like, that's important. And at the same time, like, I'm very cautious about like what we celebrate, you know? And I recognize the ways in which the sort of acceptable tolerance, right? It's like, oh yeah, Chris Rapp is gonna have some great speeches about shit America needs to be doing. And me and Sunny are gonna be like, this empire needs to fucking die today. And I'm like, you going to Congress and saying some speech, I don't know if that exactly helping America collapse more. I don't know. So it's like, how do we navigate those things, right? Well, I mean, I'm still cool with Chris Rapp, I hope, you know what I mean? And the people, and the Working Families Party, you know, I still accept their text messages, but like, we need to recognize that like the community that we're assembling, and how do we find joy amongst us, right? And how do we steward that in a principled way? So I'm really excited for your dissertation work, and I'm excited to read it.
All right, this will be the last question. Go ahead.
What I will say about the primary on May 19th, the birthday of Malcolm X, Ho Chi Minh, Lorraine Hansberry, and Mama Yuri Kuchiyama, Chris Rabb won an election, and I was happy for it, right? And I chuckled, because at the bare minimum, it put every black Zionist on notice. I'll take that for now.
Yeah.
What we do from here on out is up to us as a movement. Now, my question, for you all as artists, and your work is radically political, are you able to apply for grants to help you continue your work? Because I always wonder, you all be tagging a lot of equipment and stuff. I know it costs money. So I'm just wondering, are there rich people, foundations or whatever that you could apply for grants to continue your work?
We went through that experience with the Palestine show that we're planning last year. We were chasing a lot of grants for that. So we started off getting a grant, and then there were other grants that we didn't get. And I'm not gonna name any names, but in one of the grants that we did apply for, there was another group doing similar but less radical work, and they ultimately did get the grant. And there was a lot of discussion as to whether the fact that our work was more radical led to us ultimately not getting that grant. So it's kind of a yes and no of, it depends on the group. Some people are happy to support, other people don't want to put their money towards that.
What was the name of the foundation, or did you apply for the grant?
I'm not going to shout that out.
I want to say, because I got grant applications out there, all that stuff I said about the empire going to, like, I still let the camera know, I still need my nonprofit status, and I love it. Thank you. Thank you for the counterinsurgency against the Black Panthers, which allowed me to be a nonprofit.
She said.
Any closing words from the artists before we shut things down?
I know that the four of us are up here for our work, but I do want to point out Rachel O'Connor, Dunya, Colleen, right? There are amazing. Philadelphia has an amazing set of archivists that are in the street with us, and I draw inspiration from all of us up here, but all of you up here that are documenting. I appreciate you being there, and I know that we all have each other's backs, and yeah, I feel Philly is, we have a good, strong community of people that are in the streets for the right reasons and documenting these things. And we all believe that our work, our cameras can be used in an effective way.
As they mentioned, the exhibition on Palestine will open June 5th, and it would include work by Joe, Sunny, and Mike. This exhibition closed on June 27th. There is one more scheduled event, might be another one, we'll see. And that's on June 27th with one of our partner institutions, Scribe Video Center. There will be a series of screenings at 6 o'clock, so come to check that out. It's been wonderful working with you all. These individuals, they truly do practice what they preach. It was a communal process in the way that we put together this exhibition. I've worked with a lot of artists, and even artists that deal with activism. Oftentimes, it's sort of, there's ego that's involved in that. And that was not the case with any of these individuals. The fact that all the work is interspersed, that it's not framed, that it's not, doesn't have all these, nice touches and stuff. We wanted this timeline sort of appearance, with the work to show, as they mentioned, it's all intersectional. Like all these things. I mean, it's cyclical too. I mean, it's funny thinking about your piece, the Taylor Grant one, because when I saw that, and this is a real quick story. So Taylor Grant, radio personality, was vocal against Rizzo, who was the former mayor here in Philadelphia. And so they pulled him. Rizzo and his staff pulled him. And at that time, I'm just thinking of Jimmy Kimmel, the whole thing with Kimmel and really Colbert, and Trump. And, these things are cyclical. To your point, I'm kind of like in your space, Chris. I'm like, nothing's changed at all. And I'm sitting here listening to you all the way, yeah, a lot has changed, right? So yes, this has been an incredible show, incredible experience working with you all. Thank you so much. They'll stick around for a little bit longer if you want to talk with them. So thank you for showing up tonight.
And we want to thank James and Chris for James is a very good listener.
Yeah. In closing, fuck ICE, free Palestine.
Yes. And I love the America in my.